My clock just hit 10. We'll wait another minute and then we will get started.
Hey, like the weather.
Oh my gosh, we're so lucky.
Beautiful.
Yes.
In
I
every
don't think
corner.
I have never had a Halloween that cool before. You know, growing up here, you'd wear your mask or your costume and you would just sweat through the whole thing. And last Friday really wasn't like that. It was amazing.
I had one Halloween where opening the door so much we just had mosquitoes all through the house and didn't have that issue this year. Thank God.
Didn't have that issue this year. That's wild. Yeah, so now I mean, we trick or treat on Marco, and you don't even knock on people's doors. It was actually interesting. My daughter she thought it was really weird that we would knock on someone's door or ring the doorbell. She thought that was weird because on Marco, what they do is they sit in the driveway and they just have everything set up there and they make a night of it. You know, they even had a family that was cooking hot dogs. They must have cooked 300 hot dogs that night. Of course, my daughter, she put, I don't know, ketchup or mustard and squirted all over the person giving it to her. No good
That
deed
would
goes
be considered a
unpunished.
trick.
That was nasty. All right, let's get started. Let's get started. Why wait? Why delay the inevitable? We are joined by John Andy, who is a general contractor here in Naples, and Mike Hughes, who's the managing broker of Downing Fry. John, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thank
Give
you.
us
Thank you for
the
having
give
me.
us the elevator pitch on you and what your company does, and kind of like let us know why we should be listening to you.
Okay, so like you said, my name is John Andy. I've been a general contractor in the area for about 5 years. We started back in 2021, but we've officially started in the beginning of 2022. So what we
That was a good
basically do
time to
is
join this
work.
industry, right?
Yes, it was. So we work a lot with investors and high net worth clients to do high end remodels, and we also work with realtors to be able to remodel the houses that they need to in order to be able to sell them fast and get something that the clients are looking for on them in the market.
Yeah, good, good. I love it. So we were going to talk about some of my audience is mainly realtors, but also buyers and sellers, lenders, other attorneys. And what I wanted to look at is, your industry and how we're supposed to operate within your industry, what our expectations should be, what's the best way to protect ourselves, and then how the Florida law, how that impacts what you do and what we should expect when operating with a general contract, just generally. So I'll set you up on this, John. In my world, you become very, very relevant when one of a couple of things comes up. One, we have an open permit. That, all of a sudden you are like in my view, and I'm, a little frustrated if I have to get involved. But we do. We got to find a solution. So you got open permit. You've got a notice of commencement, which is a title issue potentially. You
Okay.
might have material liens or mechanic liens that would come after the fact if someone hasn't been paid. And then you've got disclosure issues. Why was the repair done? Or why wasn't it told to a buyer potentially? So I'm trying to think what other items there might be. Those are kind of the big ones. John, what is your kind of big picture on permits, on when you should get them, when you shouldn't, how someone should even do their due diligence in that regard.
Well, in regards to permits, you want to make sure that you get them if you're doing any project that requires permits. So if you're doing
Yeah.
anything that is moving mechanicals or you're changing windows, changing your roof, then you definitely need a permit and you want to make sure that you get it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you want to be able to protect whether you're the seller's agent or the buyer's agent, be able to protect your buyer, make sure that the permits are closed, that permits were pulled for if there's an addition or whatever it may be. So that way they're safe and they're buying something or selling something that is correct. We had a case lately where we helped out a client. They actually had an area, they bought a home and they didn't know, and they had an area that was not permitted in the house. It was an addition, but it was never permitted. So they had to go through legal and go through a lot more issues that they would have if they would have done the research in the first part and made sure that it had a permit.
Yeah, good. That's good advice. So I wrote an article, I guess it's probably almost a year ago now, where I had a spreadsheet, and I'll share this when I send out my emails on Sunday. I'll share the spreadsheet of when you need a permit and when you don't, so that you guys can reference that. But the big thing is when it's a condo, you pretty much need a permit to do anything. And I think that's it's a consumer safety thing because you're not only impacting your own unit, but units that are connected to you, anything that's within the same building. So Florida law dictates that if you're changing out a water heater, you're doing a like for like plumbing exchange or really anything, they're going to make you get a permit.
Also,
Do you have
commercial.
problems with condos? I want to hear your feedback on condos because I know they can be really challenging.
Yes, they can. And when it comes to permitting, especially also if you're around the beach or any area that is a
Yeah.
condo or something that has high flood chances or something commercial, like you said, they're going to make you pull a permit. And you want to make sure that you do it and do everything as what the municipality is asking for. So we do have a lot of experience with it. Permits can vary depending on the area that it is located or what municipality it's located at. But for the most part, you should be able to get a permit within, a month, within 1 to 2 months, depending on
Yeah, depending
municipality.
on the extent of the repair. If you're doing a roof,
Correct.
I mean, I think permits are pretty quick. If you're replacing a water heater, pretty quick, within a couple of days, a lot of times. But if it's an extensive remodel, yeah, you're probably a month, 2 months. There might be some back and forth. They want to see, something a little extra, or they want this to be updated or changed. So that's the first thing is determine whether a permit would be required or not for the work that was done. Now, Mike, I had this with one of your agents yesterday. Um, they were asking about a repair. So they got a listing, and one of the selling features of that listing was, "Hey, look at this brand new kitchen." Well, she called me and she said, "Mike, she's like, Christian, what do I do? Do I need to disclose that it's a new kitchen or like what about permits?" I said, "Well, did he get a permit?" She goes, "No, the contractor told us we didn't need it."
Wow.
Right. And so that was a little hard for me to believe that they did a whole kitchen remodel and didn't need a single permit. Now, here's what I told them. I said, number one, did they move any plumbing fixtures? Did they impact any electrical whatsoever? Drain lines? Did they cover up windows? Maybe they impacted some access areas. In those scenarios, you're almost certain to need a permit. And John, let's say the work is over a certain dollar amount. What do you need to do if does that change anything?
Yes, it actually does. If the dollar amount is over a certain amount, whether you're doing residential or commercial,
Yeah,
then sometimes they make you bring it up to code, right? So if you're over a certain amount, especially if you're again in a condo or around the beaches, they'll make you bring it
yeah.
up to code, whether that is your fault or not. If the codes are different,
And
you
then
have
if
to
you're
make
if you're in a
changes.
flood zone, you have to be very careful because FEMA rules they have additional things. Even if the work wasn't needing a permit, you might be at risk of violating FEMA requirements. So I'd say before doing a complete remodel, whether it's a bathroom, a kitchen, or something, just call the county and verify, do I need a permit for this? Write down the person's name, get it in an email, go visit them. Do your due diligence. I think some contractors or attorneys, we don't really know. So go get your own answer. Go make sure that you can sleep well at night knowing, did I need a permit or not? Now, for that particular situation, I think it's a really important part for any listing agent or any buyer's agent. If you're going to buy a property or sell a property because of a remodel, brand new remodel, that's like the first sentence in your listing. You better verify that who was it done by? When was it done? Did they have to pull a permit? Has that permit been closed out? Because you don't want that to be the selling feature if it's really the downside of the property. Now, alternatively, if you do that research and you find that everything was done perfectly and permits were pulled, closed out, the work is, immaculate, there's a warranty or whatever, that is going to help you sell the property. Whereas if you didn't have it, you might actually need to adjust your pricing a little bit. We have a deal right now. The kitchen was remodeled. No, this is even a different deal. No permit. And the buyer said, okay, I love this house. It looks beautiful. They did a great job. I want you to do an after the fact permit. John, have you ever had to do an after the fact permit?
No, we haven't had
Good.
that
You're
case
lucky.
happen yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it means you're doing it the right way. So after the fact permits can be done. Basically, you go to the county or the city and you say, hey, look, this work was done without a permit. I need to go back and get a permit for it. And I don't know, every situation is going to be a little different. But you're going to want to be able to show the inspector that you did it the right way. You might have to take some things down in order to show them what you changed so that they can verify, all right, where was the plumbing done and where's the electrical? Did they double tap an outlet? And sometimes the inspectors can be a little bit punitive, but for the most part, after the fact permits work. You can do it. They're a little timely. The big blessing is if you're working with a good contractor the first time and they have pictures and they have engineering or blueprints or they have everything is legitimate. After the fact permits actually go pretty quickly. It's when you can't verify anything of what the previous guy did and they're no longer in business or they're not available, then it becomes really challenging. Really challenging. All right.
Christian, you raised a point, and I go back to what you told me or your dad a while back, and it's so
Yeah.
true. If they ask the question, do I need to disclose? They already have the answer.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
is spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, on the seller's disclosure, and we'll take a little tangent here. Seller's disclosures are not legally required in Florida, but what is legally required is that the seller disclose any hidden or latent defects that have a material impact on the property. So there's a lot of conditions there. But the other thing is you cannot lie. You cannot go out there saying that this work didn't need to be permitted, only for a buyer later to find out that it did need to be permitted, or that it was permitted and it actually wasn't. That is the big thing. Do not lie. Do not, don't kind of encourage that. And then if we look at a seller's disclosure, they specifically ask this question. So I'm going to pull up the seller disclosure, see if I can share it if it opens. So the seller disclosure asks, did you perform any unpermitted work or any work that required a permit? I think they even talk about additions or major remodels. Here it is. All right, pulling it up. So this is the neighbor seller disclosure: plumbing, heating, roof, structural and foundation, permits, additions, and alterations. So A, material alterations, structural changes, or any other major alterations to original improvements. Yes, no, I don't know. You're going to have to answer that question. And then it's going to prompt you if yes, were permits or approvals obtained. Let's say in this scenario, your contractor told you no, you didn't need a permit. So we would push no. And then we can ignore the next one, which says if yes, were permits closed out and finalized. And then B, any work not done in compliance with prevailing building codes or zoning regulations. Maybe you say no. And then what I would suggest is down at the bottom, you under the description or the explanation, you say, complete kitchen remodel. Builder told us that we weren't required to get a permit. Buyers should investigate separately. Something like that. You're covered. You told them that what you did, you told them you didn't require a permit or you don't think you required a permit, but that the buyers should double check it if they have questions or concerns. If you did that, yes, the buyer might still be upset with you, but you gave them every opportunity to investigate that further. All right. So if you can avoid after the fact permits, all the better for you. Not always the easiest thing. Now, John, Sometimes we are under contract. We didn't do our due diligence, and now we realize we have an open permit or unpermitted work. And so a homeowner has two options, maybe three. One option is you tell the buyer to scram. You say, look, I'm not fixing anything. I'm not doing permits. That doesn't always go very well. Option number two is maybe you give them a credit or, help them out on the purchase price, and the buyer just assumes that unpermitted work or the non-closed out permit. Option number three is you start dealing with the permit. Now, if I hired your company, John, SmartSet, and you did this great work, but for some, just a paperwork glitch, there is an expired permit, didn't get fully closed out. What are the options that you have since it's your license and you pulled the permit? What can you do to kind of close that out generally?
Well, that's why documentation is so important, like you mentioned before, right? If you have the proper pictures and proper documentation, then it's easier for you to be able, if you need an after the fact permit or if you need to get an engineering letter, those are the things that they're going to ask you for. Hey, do you have pictures of everything that was done? For example, if a window got changed out, did the window get taken out? Do you take pictures of the bucks? Did you take pictures of the waterproofing? Do you take pictures of all the tap cons getting put back in? So all of those little details are very important and you want to make sure that you have it just in case this does happen. If a permit does expire and you don't close it, then you have to go back to the municipality and ask them for what they would require. Like I said, a lot of times they would require an engineering letter, which then you would go back to your engineering file and ask them for a letter. A lot of times they have to come out and do a site visit because at that point, then they're taking responsibility for the work that was completed. And they're basically saying, yes, the work was done properly and we're backing the work that was completed.
Yeah, I had a closing just like that yesterday, John, and it was a new roof. The permit didn't get closed out. The buyer asked for it to be closed. So I reached out to the roofer. He was awesome. He was really great. He dug into it right away. He apologized profusely. And the holdup was that they required an engineering letter regarding the connection from the roof to the building. Maybe it was hurricane straps. I'm not exactly sure, but it was some sort of engineering requirement. And he tried to resolve it himself by doing I don't know, some sort of letter affidavit that he wrote. And now we're just waiting to see, are they going to require an engineering letter to kind of actually close it out and kind of check the box for them? So, working with a good contractor who's in good standing with the county, they should be able to reopen that right away, solve for any open conditions. Maybe they have to provide some sort of final survey. Maybe there's just a small fee that's required, and it gets closed out pretty quickly at that point, especially if they were having inspections done along the way. The challenge,
Correct.
John, is if this is 10, 20 years later, that builder is no longer in the business. So now they have an expired license, and the seller has an option. Do I hire another contractor to take over that work? That's expensive, time consuming, and we got to start over sometimes. Or the seller technically could do an owner builder. Have you ever seen the owner builder application on that? You probably haven't.
Yes,
Oh, you have? Okay.
I have just because there's some work that we have done completed at our personal home and we have done
Yeah.
it under
Oh,
owner
well, there you
builder.
go. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, owner builder can be very helpful. So some stuff is pretty straightforward. Maybe you have a drywall guy that's doing the actual work and he just can't pull the permit, so you do. You can do that if it's a single family home. You cannot do it if it's a condo. You also can't do it if you're planning on selling or leasing the property within the next 12 months. So it doesn't usually work to resolve a closing issue. So if we've got 30 days to close and you're under contract, the homeowner really can't do an owner builder. One, because it might be a condo, and even if it's not, because we are planning on selling. In the county, for a while, they weren't really enforcing it, but now they are. Now they will look on MLS and they will see, are you actively selling the property? And they'll deny it. They will not let you do an owner builder, in which case they're going to want to reach out to someone like SmartSet or whoever you're working with to try and help them get it resolved. Alternatively, and this worked recently for a deal that I just did. There was a 20-year-old permit for a screen enclosure. Yikes. John, let me ask you this question. Are all permits created equal or are some a little bit ridiculous?
Yes, not all of them are created equal.
Not all are created equal. It's kind of, I say the same thing about survey encroachments and things like that. Some permits are like, they're really important. They're really hard to get closed out. There are a lot of inspections. In others, like a water heater, like, come on, like this is ridiculous. Or some of the smaller stuff. Well, a 20-year-old permit for a screen enclosure that is in good shape, past the private inspections that the buyer was conducting and withstood all the hurricanes over the last 20 years, that screen enclosure is probably better built than any screen enclosure I've ever seen in my entire life, but it has an expired permit. So what we agreed to do, we could not put it in the seller's name because we were going to be selling. The contractor that did it 20 years ago was no longer in business, and the seller was really trying to avoid hiring another contractor and trying to get all this done and all the cost and expense that goes with it. So what we did is we agreed to put a little money in escrow, and the buyer put it in their name after closing. So they applied to do the owner builder after closing. We had a little money in escrow to protect them. I think they had to submit a survey, do I think maybe they had to pay a small fee, and the county just closed it out. That was very lucky, and that was wonderful. So then the seller got his money back, and everybody was thrilled because permit got closed. Escrow was there to protect the buyer, but when they no longer needed it, that money went back to the seller, and no one lost any extra sleep. Doesn't always work out that perfectly. So let me ask you another question. If not all permits are created equal, what horror stories would stop a closing? And this is hypothetical, John. You and I haven't really talked about this, but like
Yes.
I'm thinking like if they did a complete kitchen remodel and they moved the sink to over here and the drain lines and all the electrical and the work was kind of a little questionable. Maybe they double tapped some breakers and they don't, the contractor was more of a handyman or the seller did it himself. I'd say those are pretty red flags there. What do you think?
Yes. So anything, what I would say is anything that requires that is structural or anything that takes concrete, one is very expensive, or anything that is mechanicals.
Yeah.
Those are things that are definitely might stop a closing or might stop a buyer from going forward with the transaction. You don't want to have to go back and cut out a bunch of concrete, dig out
Yeah.
pipes, like you mentioned, or electrical that's all done incorrectly. You don't want to take those risks.
You don't want to take those risks. I have a closing. I don't know what's going to happen to it, but the seller cut a hole in the truss above the roof there to install a recessed light over the kitchen sink. So they cut the
Mhm.
truss in order to add a light. And the buyer was really freaked out, like, What? No permits, obviously no bracing. They didn't do anything to stabilize the truss or the roof. I'd say that's a problem. Like you said, they impacted the structural. They also did a little bit of electrical work. And, that's a tough seller. That's someone that probably thinks this is not a big deal. And it's not nothing. We'll say that. So in that scenario, maybe you get an engineering letter to say what you would need to do to secure that bracing, or in the very least, you just have a GC put in some bracing, get it permitted, and call it a day. You don't always have to permit. Now, here's the question, John. I used to practice in Atlanta, and realistically, permits were not that big a deal. I saw people
Correct.
do entire basement retrofits and remodels without a single permit. I lived there for 10 years. I never pulled a single permit.
Correct.
But I come down to Naples again after being away for 10 years. This town is crazy about permits. What is wrong with people, right? Do we really need that many permits?
Correct. So here, a lot of times it has to do with the conditions that we encounter, right? We have to deal with a lot of hurricanes in our area. So they take that into account on why they require so many permits. But yes,
Yeah.
we do encounter cases where clients come from different states, Chicago or South Carolina, North Carolina, and not as many permits are required. And sometimes they even ask, why do we need a permit for this? Can't we just move forward without having to get a permit and get this completed faster? But you want to make sure that you go through with the process that is required by the municipality and get that permit.
Yeah, I would say. one of the driving factors is that we have a lot of out-of-towners that are coming in and buying property. They're paying a lot of money. You know, they might be paying $1 million for a small little home or a condo. They don't want to accept someone else's shortcut. You know, when we're younger and we have, kids in the house and we're just month to month trying to make ends meet, those people are more willing to kind of sacrifice whether there was a permit. They're just trying to get through it. But a lot of my clients, they are so picky. They want it to be perfect, absolutely perfect. So the house with the screen enclosure, the seller was like, "Look, I don't understand what the big deal is. The screen is fine." And I think there's some legitimacy there. But on the other end, the buyer was paying over $1 million for an old home. It was like, look, I don't want the trouble. I want to know it was done right. I want it to be perfect. Otherwise, I'm going to buy the one down the street. So I think the buyers drive our need for permits, and then the county is just kind of playing catch up to that. And then with all the hurricane safety stuff and the extremeness of our extreme nature of our climate, it probably requires all this.
Yes.
Pretty crazy. Mike, what do you
Yes.
think about permits?
Well, obviously, I don't believe in shortcuts. If they're
Yeah.
required, get them. I mean,
Mhm.
really, it's why deal with the what ifs down the road?
Well, you
Just
told me a story. I don't know if tell me if you're not willing to share it or change the details. But didn't you have like a pretty major issue at your house at one point? That I don't know if you want to share any of your stories, but hiring the right people who have insurance that have, that kind of working for good companies. Have you had any of those downsides you want to share with us?
yeah, I don't know that I had anything major. I did. My daughter, who works for you, uncovered that I did have an open permit out there that I was not aware of. And but what surprised me, Christian, one, I was surprised I had an open permit, but two, I was surprised at how easily it was resolved. I
Good.
mean, you assume that if you've had an open permit for 20 years, oh my God, what am I going to do? But like you say, not all permits are the same. And in this case, it was tied to a burglar alarm system I had, and it was easily resolved.
Yeah, it is actually
So,
easy. Mike, I'm glad you said that. I would challenge any of you to double check, make sure you don't have any open permits. But if you do, or if one of your clients does, go down to the permit resolution desk, go in person. Don't call them, don't email them. You'll never get a call back. But go in person and just ask them, how do I get this closed? They might need a survey. They might need you to pay a small fee. They may need you to, open the permit up, order inspections, and then they'll close it out. The biggest challenge is if something's not to code and they're going to make you bring it to code, you'll have to hire someone, but you'll at least start making progress. And Mike, in your case, a lot simpler to deal with it now when you're not trying to sell than 5, 10 years from now when you are. That's not something you're going to be comfortable wanting to do.
well, you don't want, when you go to sell your property, you don't want last minute surprises.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
no kidding.
checking to make sure you don't have any open permits out there would be a very prudent move for every homeowner,
No
just to
kidding.
see where they stand.
So, John, let me ask you the next phase. All right, we know what kind of work we're doing. We know who we want to hire. Can you give us some education on how to hire your builder, what to look for, whether it's insurance, licensing, what kind of contracts should you expect, deposits, payment terms? What is the expectation that you would want, for any buyer to think about?
So you definitely want to take into account the references that they have, right? A lot of people do a lot of marketing, so they look great on paper on social media, but whenever you actually dig into them, you notice maybe they're not as responsible as I thought they were. Maybe they don't have any references. Maybe the work that they do is shoddy, and I don't want to take that on. Right. So you want to make sure that you're doing your research, make sure you get the references that you need. Even with online references, right? So Google is a great source, but there's also references that they should be able to provide to you, pictures of past projects and how they are able to itemize their budget or what they're charging you for the project. You want to make sure that everything is up front and there's no hidden fees. A lot of times, a lot of contractors make a lot of money off of change orders. right? But it's something that they kind of build into their budget
Fit the
by
purpose.
leaving
Yeah.
things out. And then they ask you, "Oh, you wanted this extra? Okay, we have to do a change order." So you want to avoid those things. So for that, you want to make sure that you have all the items itemized, that you guys go over all of the selections together before you make a final decision and move forward with the project.
Smart. And then what about insurance? Do you send every client, do you have a new insurance rider that their name is on there, or do you just send them a copy of your deck page? What's normal?
You definitely want to make sure that you ask for license and insurance. They should be carrying both general liability and workers' comp, and you can request for a copy of that from them. So they should be able to provide you with a copy of it. If you're a business, they should even be able to include you in the insurance as certified as.
Perfect. Okay, I love that. And then what about payment terms? When someone makes a payment, should you expect some sort of like if you're using subs or maybe there's an electrician that had to come in and do work, would you expect to have like a lien waiver or what would you prepare a client for?
Definitely. So you want to make sure that you're protected because if they end up pulling a lien on the property, then you will have to deal with then going after the contractor. But every time a contractor gives a check out to a subcontractor, they should be receiving a lien waiver. So you should be able to request those and they should be able to hand those right over to you.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that for a second. Now, this is more in like the title side of things. This is where I get a lot more involved. I'll do a title search and I might see that there's a mechanics lien or a notice of commencement. So, John, I don't know if you know the law. I think it's like if you're pulling a permit and the value is over 2,500, is that the number? Is it 5,000? I don't know, whatever it is. But at a certain threshold, they make the contractor file a notice of commencement on the property. So it gets recorded down at the county. And it basically puts everyone on notice that this contractor is doing a pretty significant remodel or repair, and that they would need to make sure that that notice of commencement is closed out before issuing title, before closing, and something like that. Those notice of commencements, they last 12 months. And then at 12 months, they'll expire. So a lot of contractors will not do a notice of termination. They just leave it out there because they know that after 12 months, it's going to expire anyways. However, if you're doing a closing next month or in 6 months, you may want to ask them to do a notice of termination just so that you don't have to worry about it. And so that closes the loop. It's basically says notice of commencement. Now it's closed, just like a permit. And now we don't have to worry about it for title purposes. But alternatively, let's say I hire John and then he files a notice of commencement, he orders a permit, and then he does the work, gets everything closed out, but I don't pay him. I stiff you. At that point, John has the right to file a mechanics lien. Have you ever had to do that, John? I hope not, but have you?
Yes, we had one case where we had to do it, and there is requirements on when you can do it. You have a certain amount of days
I think it's
between when you do the
90
work.
days from the last time you did work or provided materials.
Correct.
Yeah, so
And
basically, John, you would, if you didn't get paid within 90 days, you'd have to file that mechanics lien on public record. And it basically protects your interest. It says, hey, look, I haven't been paid. And it's one of the benefits that contractors have where you don't have to file a suit. You can simply put the lien down, and it's a pretty cheap and inexpensive way to protect yourself financially.
correct. And sometimes, even to do that, you have to be able to send a notice of lien, which a lot of subcontractors send in the beginning of whenever they're going to do the project. So sometimes clients receive the notice of lien and they think they're getting liened.
Yeah.
That is not the case. They're just getting a notice that if, in the case that they do not pay, they can get liened.
Yeah, and it sets priority. So if we do the notice commencement or notice of lien in January, and then you don't pay me in June, my lien, when I actually file it, goes back to January.
Correct.
Now, going to the next level, let's say some of your more unscrupulous competitors, John, that they're using this as leverage. They're just trying to eke out a little bit more money from the seller, right? I've seen it, unfortunately. And it goes back to making sure that your contractor has good references and that you verified that they're the right people for the job. But sometimes you get caught. Sometimes an electrician who you didn't even hire, he puts a lien because he's the problem. So in that case, you have some options. One, you can pay them and get that lien released. We would do a final contractor's affidavit and get them to release the lien with the payment. Number two is we can actually bond the lien down at the county. We can, let's say he's asking for 10 grand. We put the 10 grand plus the court costs and other ancillary fees down at the county, and the lien removes from the property and attaches to the money so that the contractor is still protected, but the seller can move forward and sell the property. So we can continue to mediate our dispute over that lien. Contractor's still protected, but we're not held hostage by the lien itself. And then finally, you can contest it. So there's a notice of contestment or a notice of contest, and it brings that 12-month lien down to 60 days. So you can file that. I have a client right now, the roofer who never did any work on the property filed a lien to, because he had some agreement with the HOA, but he never did any work and he'd been paid for what he did and he really shouldn't have filed this lien. So we tried to negotiate with him. He refused. So I contested the lien and we're just going to wait the 60 days. It'll eventually go away and then we'll be good to go. Contractor would then have the ability to sue. They still have that ability, but it wouldn't be that easy thing like the lien can be. John, I hope you never have to go through that again. It's not always fun.
Yes.
All right, what else can you tell me, John? What else do you want to tell me about your company and what your favorite types of projects are, what you think you're really great at?
Our favorite types of projects are those for investors. So, for example, one of my favorite projects that we have completed in the past year was in Gulf Harbor in Fort Myers.
Yeah.
It was a condo, and we did a full remodel, and we were actually able to sell it. The day they were going to list it, they actually ended up going into contract and got that sold. And it was actually the highest selling condo in that
Oh, nice.
in that community. So those are the types of projects that we like to do. They're very interesting and very intricate. We did a lot of interesting stuff in there that, to be honest, even it was a challenge for us that we did for the first time. We did the whole kitchen. It had a whole steel area. Everything was stainless steel. So that made it super interesting. The projects that you're showing right now was one in Cape Coral. I love the one with the fireplace. That one actually has stone all the way up and it was backlit. So we like doing projects that challenge us as contractors as well. Um,
Yeah, you want to be proud of the work that you're doing.
correct.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Look at that outdoor space.
Yes, no, that
Cool.
that came out great, and then the outdoor area, outdoor kitchen as well. So
I
yeah, so
love
we definitely like getting challenged. We also do some commercial projects as well. We have a project that we're working on with Tyson Eye that we really like. We've done some projects for the vineyards in Naples. We really like those as well. So whatever project they may be, whether small or big, we like helping out. We like working with realtors, so that way they are able to sell the properties faster. Um, a lot of times they need to do something to the house, something simple that it might just be paint, touch-ups, change out the cabinets or change out countertops. And all of the countertops are fabricated. We have our own fabrication shop.
Oh,
So
wow.
we love to take those projects on and we're able to turn them around quickly so that way the listing can get on the market.
Cool, man. I love it. How can people reach out to you, John?
They can reach out to me or through us through social media, through Build with Nandi or Smart Set Builders. And we also have our website, smartsetbuilders.com.
I love it. Perfect. Thanks, man. I appreciate you being a guest on our show today.
No, thank you for having me.
Mike,
It
you
was a
got any
great time.
more genius moves for us? What do you want to tell us?
I actually have a question for John.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
Yes, sir.
yeah, we always tell our agents to make sure you ask, are they licensed and insured? Is that enough? I mean, do you find some contractors have very low insurance just so they say yes? But I'm just wondering what your perspective is of that. If someone asks you, are you licensed and insured? How do you handle that?
Well, when they ask you if you're licensed and insured, you're able to provide them with the certificate, right? Which as a client, you can ask them for that certificate of insurance. And in the certificate of insurance, it'll tell you what type of insurance they actually have and what are the amounts it has. Certain jobs require you to have higher insurance, especially if you're doing commercial or working in certain buildings. They require you to have higher insurance amounts. So you could always verify that by asking for the COI.
Okay.
Great.
Interesting. Thank you.
All right, guys. So I hope you have an awesome week. If you need me or anybody on the show, just reach out to us directly. Good luck.
All
Thank you,
right.
buddy. Bye,
Take
guys.